Thank you again to Dawn and Catherine. And now joining Derek again on stage for our next conversation is Chris Molineaux, the President and CEO of Life Sciences Pennsylvania, and also Joan Lau, CEO of Spirovant Sciences. So Derek, take it away.
Thank you again. Hello.
You switched seats.
I did switch seats, yes. Chris, I'm going to start with you. Between 2017 and 2018, venture capital funding for life sciences in Philadelphia grew by 485%. What is Philadelphia doing right? What's so special about this area?
Well, first, thank you, Derek, for having us here. I think it's important to acknowledge that the increase in funding for biotech in venture capital in the venture capital world is not unique to Philadelphia. Yes, it increased here for sure, but investment in biotech by VCs has been pretty hot for the last several years. Going back to the previous discussion, though, the previous panel, I think what is hot in particular here is the cell and gene therapy expertise. I will say that Kathy High was particularly modest in her talking about her role and how it all evolved here in Philadelphia. That was not by mistake. That was a strategic plan laid out about 25 years ago by Bill Kelly at Penn, and he hired Jim Wilson, he hired Carl June, he hired Kathy High. And now, as a result of that core team, we've got a virtual family tree of companies across Philadelphia that's driving that interest in cell and gene therapy and that expertise, and that is unique to Philadelphia. We've got more than 60 labs in Philadelphia working in advanced cell and gene therapy. I think there's nearly $1 billion has been invested in cell and gene therapy manufacturing just in Philadelphia. So I think that's probably our differentiator and certainly what's attracting those VC dollars that Dawn talked about. Now they're knocking on our doors.
Joan, I want to make sure I give you a chance to answer this question as well. You said you also had some theories for what makes Philadelphia so special in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Chris in terms of the growth here and what has happened generally within the venture capital community in terms of investment. It is an area which has returned a fair share of investors' dollars, and so that has just continued to grow. I think it's both cyclical and counter-cyclical, if it can be that. And so as new innovations come up, particularly in the Philadelphia area, and I think there's a theme of gene and cell therapy. That activity is primarily occurring here in Philadelphia, and so you're seeing a more than fair share of investment in this area.
Do you think, given the recent and certainly accelerating interest among the venture capital community in gene and cell therapies, particularly in Philadelphia, now that these two institutions, these two industries are coming together in a really big way, potentially for the first time, as someone who sort of straddles both of these industries, do you think they understand or misunderstand each other, the venture capital world and the life sciences world?
Well, venture capital and those that operate companies have some shared interests, and then there's what I would call creative and deliberate tension between the two. Venture capital, at the end of the day, diversifies across a portfolio of companies, so they think about things differently. It's a primarily financial instrument. For companies, for instance, I'm running a company right now. 95, 100, 120% of my time and anybody at any one of our companies is completely focused on one company. And so there are differences. There's differences in goals and objectives. And so that happens, but given that, it's still a very productive conversation. What we have in venture capital these days are extraordinarily informed, creative, and thoughtful people who understand drug development, they understand drug commercialization, they understand basic science, and that makes for a much more robust conversation.
Yeah, I think the timing, just the calendar is also contributing to that healthy tension. So the VCs, they want to see a return as quickly as possible, or a failure as quickly as possible, frankly, but a return as quickly as possible. But
they like the returns better.
They prefer the returns, but if you're going to fail fast. They want to see a return quickly, but they also recognize that the average amount of time it takes to get a drug through that process to approval and launch is 10 to 12 years. So I think that also adds to the tension, but they certainly understand it.
Chris, as someone who represents a lot of different components of this life science ecosystem in the Philadelphia region, what do you hear from your members as being the single most important concern that they have going forward?
I think for the individual companies, it's always capital. There's no question about that. But I think as a community, and what we hear mostly from the scientists and the tech transfer offices is we don't have enough executive talent, startup CEO talent to catch all these technologies that are coming out of the universities to turn them into companies. We've had tremendous successes and acceleration of success over the last couple of years. Companies like Teamunity and Cabaletta Bio and Passage Bio, you go right down the list. We don't have enough CEO talent to capture all those and run companies. We've got unmatched development and manufacturing and commercial talent because of the large pharma legacy, but it takes a special individual, probably with a couple of screws loose, to actually
Thank
be
you
a
very
CEO.
much. I appreciate that,
absolutely.
Chris.
Well, this is then a question for both of you. I wonder why you think that is. Whether you think that the deficit in successful startup executive talent is just a national deficit, it's just a really unique skill, or whether you perceive it to be, and I don't know if I was reading this into your answer, a deficit that is specific to this industry or this region.
Well, I mean, I almost disagree with your premise. So I think, forgive
Is it
me.
my premise?
I think it's my premise. But go ahead.
Go ahead.
At the end of the day, individuals who have the energy to start companies, to do these things, what happens in other places, venture capital gets to know the idea over time. So you're not worrying about the 1-hour presentation. You're not worrying about the pitch in front of the investors in a formal way. You're running into people in the coffee shop. You're running into people on the street, you're seeing them on the treadmill next to you. And so you can have these little moments where you build relationships. That has been a little harder here because there's not much resident venture capital. So when venture capital and these startup entrepreneurs get together, it's only in the formal times, and therefore the companies are being and the individuals are being judged on the merits of what's in front of them, not about the relationship that they're building and pivoting along the way. That's why I think it is true that perhaps we have fewer CEOs who are doing the startups, but I also think it's because those two parties don't interact nearly as frequently as they might in some other places.
Totally agree. I mean, and that's, I mean, if you look at Cambridge, up in, next to Boston, it's not Boston, it's really Cambridge that's so hot. That's been going on for a long time. It's relatively new here in Philadelphia. But what we do see, to Joan's point, is a migration. I think Dawn mentioned this. We're attracting senior executive, we're attracting CEO talent to Philadelphia. Steve Kelly being a great example, who now runs Charisma. He came down from Massachusetts. So the more we can attract that talent from out of state, because of some of the intangibles, quality of life, cost of living, proximity to the regulatory bodies in DC, the markets. There are so many advantages here, plus the foundation of the technology. That's what we have to do, but it does take time for sure.
Right. No, that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought quite about that intersection between sort of the non-professional social glue that sometimes happens in a city where all these kinds of people are running into each other and they see each other at the gym and they develop a certain trust and elan, versus a situation where the venture capitalists are flying in for 36 hours and having a professional meeting and then leaving. You have a different relationship with the people that you're talking with. I wonder, in addition to the issue of talent and specifically the issue of startup executive talent, as someone in this business, whether you have other top mind concerns like real estate or hiring or diversity.
Well, thanks for asking. I mean, we are hiring. We're always looking for strong talent. We're looking for the right cultural fit. I think everyone's doing that. It's become challenging in the marketplace to hire talent these days. The biggest problem we have, and Chris knows this, we're one of his many member companies, we are at a loss for lab space. It's a fight. It's a bidding war out there, particularly in West Philadelphia, near Penn, where Don Bonnell is, and near CHOP, where Kathy High has been. The space is very challenging to find to grow each of the individual companies.
What are we doing about that?
It's expanding outside of the city. So I think a lot of former lab space that was run and owned by large pharma companies is being repurposed. The latest example is the former GSK facility in Gulf Mills, which is only about 10 miles west of here. And they're repurposing 1 million square feet of labs and office space into incubator site, housing companies, also putting, I think, residential potentially, retail, shops, restaurants. I mean, really trying to turn it into an ecosystem of its own in the suburbs.
The last question I have for both of you before we turn it over to the audience for the last few minutes is about diversity in hiring. This is an issue that's come up in every single panel that we've had on this sort of circuit for the Atlantic's sort of life sciences event series. And I want to hear from you whether you are whether you are individually concerned about diversity in hiring and diversity just generally, within the industry.
Well, no time like now. I'm a queer person of color running a biotech company here in Philadelphia. I do this work. It's thank you.
You check 4 boxes right there.
Yeah, that's. But at the end of the day, I'm also concerned about it. I am looking for the right talent, the right people. At the end of the day, though, the right voices, the experiences that come from different places, and we're looking for people who have the right cultural fit, right experiences. But our team, and I'm very proud of our team, we're very diverse. We have people of all different stripes, and I think it behooves every company to bring that in. I do think it increases enterprise value for each company to think about it that way. I know that Chris Molineaux thinks about it that way. I am thrilled with the way that panels are going in terms of bringing new people on board. Chris?
Yeah, and I think it's going to take time to change. But yes, diversity, inclusion starts at the academic level, I certainly believe. But the companies, the large companies, the small companies have become much more sensitive about it, I'd say over the last 2 decades. And to the same degree that the academic community is a pipeline of talent, the large pharma companies are also a pipeline of talent to the startups. So I think that whole ecosystem is changing over time, but it's got a long way to go, certainly because of a deep, deep legacy that has to be turned around.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot, I'm asked about this often. There's a lot of inherent biases and other things. We're just constantly chipping away. It's not going to ever end, but I think things are looking better.
Yep.
That's great. Do we have questions in the audience while I pick up the mess I made?
Hi, thank you for coming out. So I was just wondering, having taken the plane from Philadelphia to San Francisco during JP Morgan week, the plane is full of talent. There's a lot of people here. What sort of things should we be advocating for from a public policy perspective to grow that talent here as opposed to trying to poach it from out of state?
From a public policy standpoint, we really focus on workforce development initiatives that are run by the state. We're not a workforce development organization, but what we push for is funding for existing workforce development initiatives. We've got workforce investment boards in each of the counties in Pennsylvania. And keep in mind, we're also statewide. So we're looking at Pittsburgh, the Lehigh Valley, the center part of the state, as well as Philadelphia. But funding for workforce development initiatives, and then leave it to the workforce development experts to run those, but to be adequately funded. That's probably number one in terms of the talent issue. But we also want to maintain the research and development tax credits that exist here in Pennsylvania that are a lifeline to a lot of startup companies. The R&D tax credit that you're eligible for is based on how much you increase your spending in R&D. So even if you're not a profitable company or even marketing a product, you can take that tax credit, you can sell it to another company and actually use that cash to continue to fund your operations. So it's primarily tax policies that we advocate for, workforce development policies, and also the innovation zones that are funded across the state.
Anyone else?
What's that? Great. Hey, Chris, Dennis O'Leary with Syneos Health. How are you?
Very good.
Just a quick question. What kind of synergy do you think we have with Bio-New Jersey in the fact that so many of these Pennsylvania bio manufacturers and big pharma have offices both in Pennsylvania as well as New Jersey? It just seems like there's so much synergy between both, and I'd like to get your view.
I totally agree, and we would love to have all of their membership come to Pennsylvania. No, really. I would say that the strongest synergies with Bio-New Jersey, Debbie Hart's a good friend of mine. She's my counterpart in New Jersey, if you don't know Debbie. We work together on programs. We work together with our group purchasing arrangements. Just about anything you can think of where we do have overlap or synergies, we work closely together. Even on federal level policy issues. The only place we don't work together, and we don't really diverge, we just don't work closely together, is state level policy, because the two state legislatures are so different from each other. But programmatically, referrals, we're constantly sending each other referrals about companies, about talent. And yeah, there is a lot of talent that lives in New Jersey and works in Pennsylvania and vice versa. But it's typically more at the national or federal level that we work most closely together, on policy issues anyway.
Thank you. We have time for a few more questions. Here in the front.
I have a question about marketing. Do you guys think that Philadelphia is doing a good enough job marketing itself as a hub for life sciences? If not, what should the region be doing to signal that these things are happening here?
Well, I can't really speak to marketing. Maybe Chris will be able to talk about relative scale. But in my mind, at least within the biotech community, everyone knows what has occurred here. Penn and what's happened at CHOP, particularly with Spark and what Kathy High has done, it really is the Silicon Valley. I think it got coined there. I think it's very true. I think everyone knows this. I believe Chris was behind a surreptitious effort of using that across various industry groups and conferences that we've been going to. So I do think that does exist. In terms of people outside of the area getting to know it, I think that would be a very interesting thing as we bring more new people into the biotech industry, getting more involved on the life science and the sciences and then all the affiliated efforts that are needed to support the industry overall. Chris, what do you think?
I think historically, no. Particularly not in life sciences. I think historically, but I'd say over the last 3 to 4 years, it's almost been forced because of the incredible technologies that are coming out of the labs around here. So the news coverage, the earned media that has gone national and international has probably been our best promotional material. And there's so much of it that it's just a rich environment for promoting, whether it's proactive, dollars down, paid advertising, or just earned media through the different successes that have taken place. There really isn't a statewide effort, though, at the state government level, certainly not adequate to promote what we've got here. That needs to change.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. You made an interesting point. The idea that Philadelphia's reputation within the life science community is established, that there's a national, even international understanding that this is the Silicon Valley of cell and gene therapy. How much does it matter that reputation extend outside of the life science industry? Does it matter on the one hand so that you can attract people who work in design and marketing and sales maybe, or was the sort of implicit message there that it might not matter so much so long as among the scientific community there's a perfect understanding of what's going on here?
I mean, I think it's very important. So we are trying to attract the absolute best talent to our company, Spirovant, to other companies. And I think it's really exciting to build a new website for whatever other, knick-knack it might be. But here you can join this team and really make a difference in somebody's life. And so the more that people outside the life science community knows, the better that we can get as a community to deliver important medicines.
Yeah, I agree. And what's sometimes lost is the multiplier effect of jobs that come in what I like to refer to as the industry around the industry. So law firms, accounting firms, contract manufacturing, PR firms, marketing firms. You go right down the list, and just about every type of discipline or type of company, service provider you can think of, somehow is touching the life sciences community in this area. So it's not only the scientists, attracting the best scientists and the best talent to work in the labs or even on the commercial side, but all the multiplier industries around it that are also being attracted.
I think maybe you just wrote your marketing copy right there. You can go to some places and add a user, or you can come to Philadelphia and save a life.
That's
Maybe
exactly
that's the
right.
bumper sticker.
There you go.
Anyway, that's all we have time for. Thank you very, very much. And please thank these panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Chris, Joan, and Derek, and all of our panelists this evening. And once again, I want to thank Bristol-Myers Squibb for their generous support of our journalism. And thank you all for joining us. You know your time is precious, and we appreciate you coming. And everyone, hope you get home safely. Thank you.